What is the best story you have about going to a trip club? I was at Play It Again Sam's in Vegas for a buddy's bachelor party. It was about 4 a.m. and there were 15 drunk guys sitting around at the trip club. My friend decides he is hungry and orders up a stack of pancakes. As he is eating them, another friend walks over to a tripper and buys him a lap dance, telling her my friend has always had a fantasy where he gets a lap dance while eating pancakes. So, she goes over and starts grinding and he just keeps eating. She takes the fork from him and feeds him the pancakes. She then rubs pancakes all over herself and feeds them to him. Then she takes a plate and sets it to the side and starts dancing, and my friend yells more pancakes at the top of his lungs. She just sat next to him and fed him pancakes for 3 songs. Well, this is more of a story about what happened before the trip club. We were having a bachelor night out for a friends of ours and the plan was laser tag and then trip club. We put all our stuff in a locker and came back out to find that most of our shit were stolen. So we had to do a police report and everything, and we were pissed. When the policewoman was told the whole story and how now I have to bail on the night CZ I no longer have a valid ID. My passport was expired. She said that we shouldn't let this ruin the night and wrote me a document saying I should be allowed into the trip club, even putting her personal number and name on the floor for the bouncer to check. So I borrowed $100 from my then girlfriend and went to a trip club. I was 19 years old, nervous as hell. Some coworkers took me to the local trip club and bought me a lap dance from Miss Nude Canada. No idea if she was. I didn't exactly ask for her credentials. I get nosebleeds easily, and when she plowed her massive arches into my face, guess who bled all over them? She freaked, thought she'd broken my nose, and my coworkers nearly died with laughter. She came by our table after we'd both cleaned up and apologized. Ended up sitting with us for a while. She took me to a back room later to make it up to me. And lo and behold, I was no longer a virgin. Not a club, but I hired a tripper for a bachelor party. This tiny 5 feet 2 inches, circa 80 lb girl and her bouncer, 5 feet 6 maybe 110 lbs, showed up, drunk as hell and 2 hours late. She asked to borrow the bathroom to brush her teeth and wash up, as she had just come from another party. Turns out she was 2 months off having a baby. She starts dancing and everything good. Groom goes up for a dance, then groom's father. While she's on groom's father, she blasts buoy milk in his eye. Everyone starts laughing and turns out she likes being laughed at, because she runs around squirting everyone. While the groom was getting a dance, the bouncer asked if I wanted him to dance too. Awkward. I did a gig as Santa Claus at a Holiday Lights festival. I was done around 10 o'clock and, instead of changing at the clubhouse, I decided to drive home to see what kind of reaction I'd get. On the freeway I got lots of stares and some horn honking. Then I got to my exit and headed through downtown to get home. Then I passed the PT's. The parking lot looked empty, so I thought, what the hell? I had a bag full of candy canes and little trinkets, so I went on in. I did tell the doorman that I was putting him on the naughty list for charging Santa $5 admission. But then I learned something. Trippers love Santa, especially when you give them candy and necklaces and rings. My friends and I went to a trip club in Montreal for the first time a couple of years ago. I got kicked out for bringing my own vodka. 2 of my friends, a male and female, got a private room with a tripper. Female friend, in her drunken and mother henny state, reduced the tripper to tears with questions like, what are you doing with your life, do your parents know you're doing this, etc., and ended up giving her an hour-long pep talk on potential and all that life has to offer. Male friend was not impressed, to say the least. 2 other female friends got a private room with a tripper where they lost their homo virginity, and the tripper gave them a teddy bear-shaped vibrator to remember her by. After a drunk lunch last fall, my cousin went to Rick's on Bourbon Street for some after-lunch shenanigans with a bunch of her co-workers. They sat down and the next dancer walked out dressed exactly like Sarah Palin. They were besides themselves in amazement about the tripper's costume choice, right down to the glasses. She nailed it and was a dead ringer for SB. After she finished her dance, my cousin and her friends motioned the stripper over and asked how the woman got inspired to dress up like SP. And what an awesome statement she was making. The tripper looked at them and said, "Who?" A few days after my 18th birthday, I went to the trip club with a couple of friends. Being young and naive, I accepted a lap dance from the first girl that offered. She was small and Asian, and she had a heavy accent. So, she starts rubbing up on me and and saying stuff like, "Oh, you looky?" Ooh, yeah, in her heavy accent, and I'm wondering where the hell this girl is from. At one point I grab her boobs and she pulls my hands away from them. Also didn't know this was allowed. Well, anyway, the song is over. She gets up and says to me with a totally straight face and without a trace of any accent, "It's going to be $20 if you want another dance." A year ago, 3 friends and I went to the least classy of my city's trip clubs. Yes, there's a difference. Got a table in the back and set up and started to play Settlers of Catan. We occasionally glanced up at the girls, but mostly kept to our game. A few trippers walked by and gave us weird looks, but nothing major. One girl came over to us and asked what we were doing, and a friend of mine, instead of just saying, "Oh, just playing a board game," actually launched into a full explanation of Settlers, starting with, "Well, you see, it's a resource management game." Needless to say, the explanation kinda went over her head. We got about 20 minutes into the game. You know, when it's just starting to get interesting, before a manager came over and told us we couldn't play in there, and we had to pay attention to the girls. As we were packing up, another girl came over to us and asked what happened, why the manager talked to us. I started to say, "Well, we brought in this board game called Settlers," and before I had even finished the word Settlers, the tripper exclaimed, "You brought Settlers of Catan to a trip club?" We spent the rest of the evening talking to her. Talked to a tripper about computer games. She actually named Tim Schafer, and her favorite games were the Monkey Island series. She hadn't yet heard of Psychonauts, so I recommended it to her. Talked for a half hour at least, and she never once asked me for a private lap dance. Love that. My friend, let's call her Talia, cause that's her name, was at a trip club a while back, and after a few sherbets too many shouted out, "Frick this shoot, I can do miles better than that." Shoves tripper off stage, trips down to Knickers, gets chucked out of club by bouncers, standing on Mary Street in her knickers freezing her ass off, friends begging to be let back and to get her clothes. Bouncers eventually relent. Next morning remembers nothing. Best bit is I work with her brother and I never knew about this until he said, "You must know my sister Talia then?" "Really? Talia's your sister? She's cool, man." "Yeah, funny thing. Quotation mark. Backstory first. A friend of mine used to know Megan Fox, so I'd met her a few times way back when she was not nearly as famous as she is now. So I show up to the body shop on Sunset Boulevard here in LA, and me and my buddy are hanging back trying not to attract too much attention since we don't have a lot of cash. Girl starts walking up to us and I try to wave her away like not interested, thinking it's a lap dance offer. Smoking hot girl comes right up to me and gives me a big hug and says, "Serial eater, how are you?" I had mistaken Megan for one of the dancers there. She invited us to sit with her at the stage and we hung out, getting a free show thanks to her generous friends, which included Ozzy Osbourne's son. I forget his name. Bachelor party. Tripper on stage takes off bachelor's glasses, rub them all over third area, inserts them, gives them back. Another guy we were with licked them clean. Watching my friend's smile wiped off his face when the hot tripper turned around and has only a stub where her arm should be, but he was too polite to just leave the dollar and walk away. He stuck it out. Wife and her sister were out of town, so I decided to take a bud to all-nude place who was down because of a breakup. My wife and her sister took her car out of town and left her sister's car at the house. For some reason we decided to take my wife's sister car to the club. It was by obs, so when we got there we walked down a little ways to a gas station to grab some brew, go back, pay the cover and proceed to enjoy the show. While inside we realized neither of us had a bottle opener to open the brew. My friend says he has one on his keys in the car. So I give him the keys, he goes and gets it and then proceed to party down. It's getting late and we decide it's time to get some food and head home. I ask him for the keys to the car since I gave them to him. He doesn't have them. What the frick? We search around a club in the different areas we were sitting. No keys anywhere. We check outside the club. Cool, the car is still there, but no keys. I had to call another bud at 2 in the morning to come pick us up and take us back to my house. The next day they were coming home and had to tell my wife and her sister we lost the keys at a TI bar and her car was in the parking lot. I had to meet them at the club as they drove in from out of town. Because luckily her sister had a spare key in her purse. It wouldn't have been so bad if it was a regular trip club, but an all-nude. My wife just gave me that look of really exclamation point. All nude? So, throwing a bachelor party for my friend. Also happened to be performing the wedding. Was at a trip club and the fact that I was performing the wedding came up while I was getting a lap dance. The tripper started saying that she had never given a preacher a lap dance, and even said that her father was a preacher. I told her that Jesus loves her no matter what she does. I got a weird look and she abruptly ended the lap dance. Fast forward to the end of the night where my buddies saw the same tripper getting chewed out and fired, so I may have had a part in getting a tripper fired. Maybe. My brother, who's my best friend, died in a motorcycle crash a little over 3 years ago at the age of 30. The last time I saw him he took me to the trip club. I had just turned 18 and bought a lap dance for me and my boyfriend at the time. I'm a girl, by the way. He crashed about a month after this. He was the funniest guy I knew. I vividly remember him cracking jokes all night, down to the inflections in his voice. Oh, and the lap dance was pretty nice too, winking face.